Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters, along with my co-host, Eddie Jones. And before we get started, Eddie, on the show, it's 9/11, so we just want to remember everybody that was affected on that date and hope that everybody had a good weekend. And, 15 years ago, 9/11 happened, and hopefully it won't happen again. And the U.S. continues to go forward as, we fight terrorism in the world today. And with that, we've got a good show for you today. Actually, a different show. We're going to talk about the World Cup of Hockey. We're going to go over the format. We're going to talk about the teams. We're going to give some predictions. We're going to also talk about some of the action. If you watched some of the games, we saw Kessler out there mixing it up. We've seen North America scoring a bazillion goals. So we have a few different things to get to, Eddie. And with that, we'll talk a little bit about the format first. And it's set up in two groups. You have Group A, which is Europe, Canada, the U.S., and Czech. And then you've got Group B, which is going to be Finland, North America, Sweden, and Russia. So those are your two groups. And let's talk a little bit about the format, Eddie. How is this going to play out? Who's going to play who and how many rounds and whatnot?
Yeah, so there's been a little bit of criticism about there being no quarterfinal. Considering the tournament is only about a couple weeks, it makes more sense. But since there's 4 teams in each group, they all play each other once, so they'll all play 3 games. And based off obviously wins and overtime losses and regulation overtime wins and goal differential, the top 2 teams will move on in each group. So let's say if Canada and the U.S. win Group B, Group A, and North America and Sweden win Group B, the winner of Group A will play the runner-up in Group B in the semifinal, and the winner of Group B will play the runner-up of Group A, and that will be the semifinal match, and they'll play one match each. And they're scheduled for the 24th and the 25th of September. And the winners of each of those matches will then go on and play in a best-of-3 format final, where the games will take place on September 27th, September 29th, and the final game, if needed, on October 1st. So that's how it's going to line up. I think it's interesting to see them do that. It's a little bit different kind of format that we've ever really seen been done in hockey. It's more of a kind of World Cup of soccer thing where you see it going on. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do it, and it really, any team right now has a chance to win.
Yeah, I like that format, Eddie. We talked about this a little bit before the show and how it's a little bit different. I like, after the top 2 teams in Group A and Group B are determined, it's, they don't just play each other to then go on to the final. You've got A playing B and B, playing A. You got it crossed over. So it's kind of interesting because, and we'll talk about our predictions a little bit later, but you still could have 2 people from Group A playing in the final or 2 from Group B or some kind of a combination. So I like it. It's a variety. It makes it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more difficult, and it just adds a little extra element, I think, to it in that. So I guess we'll call it the second round, as if we want to call it that, Eddie.
Yeah, and the other thing I like too is a lot of times you see in a tournament, and I think there's really no upset, obviously, with how good each team is, but the fact that they're having a best-of-3 final, I think that kind of adds something to something other than the playoffs that we haven't seen in any international tournaments. Usually it's say in the Olympics, it's a gold medal game, or even in the World Cup, the World Championships, it's just the one gold medal game, and the winner goes on to win. But in this case, you get to play at least 2, or it's the best of 3 format. So I think that adds a little bit of something we haven't seen in a while. So even if you lose game 1, you still have those 2 chances to get back into it.
Yeah, definitely. I like it. I like the second round. I like you said, the third, the final matchup, that it's actually 3 games and not just a winner take all in one game. So I think that also adds to it as well. And, with that, we might as well talk about Group A, and we'll talk about the different teams here. We'll kind of go over a little bit about how we think each one will shape up, and then we'll also talk about Group B. But in Group A, if we start out, we'll start out with your and my favorite, and probably the favorite of a lot of people, is Team Canada. As you know, it's got Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry on there from the Ducks, but also some other quality players as well. Logan Couture, Sidney Crosby, Matt Duchene, Patrice Bergeron. You have, Stamkos, Seguin, Taves. I mean, we can just add on to the list of forwards here, and it's just ridiculous. The defense, which maybe not as strong, but you've got Burns, Doughty, Muzzin, Pietrangelo, Weber, still solid players as well on there. And then you've got Crawford, Holtby, and Carey Price in net, which obviously you can't go wrong with those guys. So this team's got a pretty solid lineup going through all the players on here, Eddie. What do you think as far as, them doing well in certain aspects and maybe not so well in some other areas?
Well, I think they have to be the favorites going in. I think you may take a little bit of heat for just saying that Team Canada is one of your favorites, but uh, their forward group is top notch. I mean, elite players everywhere, like you said. Crosby's there, Stamkos is there, Tavares, Taves, Getzlaf, and Perry are there. Bergeron. These are top of the line players. Maybe the only argument for elite player you could maybe say is Brad Marchand, but based on the season he had last year, I mean, he deserves to be there. So I think you can't go wrong with the forward line. Obviously, they did struggle in their first pre-tournament game against the U.S., but they came out the other day and won 5-2 and looked really good. Defense on the right side, especially with Doughty and Burns and Pietrangelo. Doughty just won the Norris. Burns was up for contention. Pietrangelo, people expect him to be in contention for the Norris for the rest of his career as well. And then you've also got Shea Weber too. So right there on the right-handed defenseman, you've got some of the best of the best. I think the only weakness, if you had to pick one, it's hard to pick weaknesses on these top teams and where you're getting the best players in the NHL. But left-sided defense, it's not the best. I mean, maybe it's the best that you could get for Team Canada, but it's definitely not the best in the tournament. You've got Jay Bouwmeester who replaced Duncan Keith, and obviously that's a huge loss for them. I think if Keith was there, we wouldn't really be talking about the left side being weaker. And then you've got Jake Muzzin, who will most likely play just alongside Drew Doughty and Vlasic, who should play alongside Brent Burns, and them both being teammates in the NHL. But if there was a weakness you would have to draw on for Canada, I think it would definitely be left side on defense. But then you move into goaltending, and you've got arguably the two best goaltenders in the league in Carey Price and Braden Holtby, and not even another slouch in Corey Crawford, who's up there as well. So you've got three elite goaltenders in that. There's not too many weaknesses for this team, and you can see why they're an early favorite.
Yes, and as it going on with the theme of them being the favorite, let's clear this up here, okay? I think they're the favorite for the tournament, but they're not my favorite team, Eddie. Okay. So no, just all joking aside, we had some heat. It was funny, tweeting out different things during the last two games. Obviously, USA won the first, and then Canada came back and won the second. It was just funny to put out tweets both sides. Each team winning. It was funny to see some other people chirping on there back and forth. It's all in good fun, people. We obviously Eddie is for Team Canada and I'm from USA. Hello, but it's just good fun. And I know some people take it really serious and whatnot. Don't read too much into the tweets. We're just having a good time. But like you said, Eddie, I do agree. I do think Canada is the favorite to win this one. The forward line is stacked. I agree with you on the defense. Maybe the left side's a little weak, but solid goaltending for sure. And if they're going to play like they did in that second game against Team USA, then I think they're going to have a really excellent chance. And we'll go into Team USA now too. They have a good squad as well. I mean, they came out on fire in that contest against Canada. You saw Kessler smash Weber into the glass. You then saw Thornton smash Kessler in the second game. So you already saw all that action ramping up. But this is a team that's loaded too. I mean, you've got Patrick Kane on there. You got TJ Oshie, Zach Parise, Max Pacioretty, Kyle Palmieri. I mean, there's plenty of forward depth on this team. The defense as well, Jack Johnson, Eric Johnson, Ryan McDonough, Niskanen, Sutter. I mean, you've got plenty of guys there as well on the defense. The goaltending is solid for Team USA as well. Ben Bishop, Jonathan Quick, and Corey Snyder. This team, after watching these two games, Eddie, between Canada they're pretty even in my mind. I mean, like I said, I still go with my earlier prediction of Canada being the favorite, but I think it's going to be interesting to see these two teams play, especially after those two non meaningless games or whatever that people were saying that weren't really meaningless because of all the intense play that happened.
Yeah, and the U.S. definitely still has a good team. You've got a bona fide superstar in Patrick Kane. You've got some great players in Kessler and Backus and Pacioretty and Joe Pavelski who's improved every season. You've got Blake Wheeler who's coming off a great season. Kyle Palmieri who's coming off a great season. So up and forward they're great too. On defense, I think they've got a better left side than Team Canada and Suter, McDonough, and Johnson. The right side is maybe a little bit worse, but the guys that you have over there are still good. Bufflin and Carlson and Niskanen and Johnson. I think that's still a great right side. And then in goal, and I mean, take your pick. You've got Bishop, Quick, or Schneider. Any one of those guys could win you a game. So I think they're a great team, and I think they're the favorites to move on with Canada in that group. I think the only thing you might say is a weakness for them is maybe finding some consistency to score goals across every line. Obviously, you're going to rely a lot on Patrick Kane and Joe Pavelski and Max Pacioretty, and then from there, I mean, you've got Kessler and Backus and Abdelkader and Dubinsky. Are those guys going to score goals for you? I mean, they definitely can. But I think we're nitpicking here to try and find weaknesses on
Right,
all-star
right.
teams. But if you had to pick one, I think maybe it would be consistency from every line to go out there and be a threat.
And I mean, I know it's just a small picture, but if you look at those two games against Canada, it kind of was like that. I mean, they were more on fire in the first game, getting goals, and then the second game, you saw they weren't scoring as much. So, I mean, obviously, like you said, we're nitpicking, but we're just trying to give you our thoughts, as what we like or maybe dislike on the teams. But I agree with you. If there's anything, maybe it's the consistency in the offense. And like Eddie mentioned, we both think that it's going to be U.S. and Canada winning this group. That's how we think it's going to pan out. But we'll still talk about the other teams as well. We've got two more in this group. We've got Europe, which this is kind of an interesting team, Eddie, because it's players from all over the different countries. The people that aren't from Finland, that aren't from Sweden or Russia or Czech. So it's a big mix, and I think it's interesting because you have this variety of players, but I also think it's kind of a weakness because of maybe the depth on this team, as you and I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, as the way it pans out, because it's just really spread out. You've got all kinds of guys on here. I mean, you've got Gabrick, you've got Hossa on here, you got Kopitar, you've got still some big names. You've got Tatar, Vanek. And, there's still some quality forwards on there. The defense, obviously, Zdeno Chara is as big as they get. Roman Yoshi. You still have a few of those guys. Lucas Spiza, former Duckies, on this team as well. It's going to be interesting with this team, but I think they're going to have a tougher time. I think that, as far as scoring and playing solid defense on both sides of the puck is going to be a little bit difficult for Team Europe.
Yeah, I think they'll have no problem with their top two lines and their top two pairing on defense. You would obviously expect the line of Kopitar, Tatar, and Zuccarello to be a threat, and then you can still throw over Hossa and Niederreiter, and like you said, Vanek and Franz Nielsen and Gabrick and Bodker as well. And those are all solid NHL guys. But when you get on beyond that, you've got Yannick Hansen, you've got Tobias Rieder, you've got Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. I mean, these are third or fourth line guys in the NHL, and you're going up against teams who are like Canada or even the U.S. who are playing, on every line. On their fourth line, they've still got superstars. So I think that's the only area they're going to struggle, is having to ice those lines and really, kind of just hold back and play defense against some of the superstars that they're going to have to go up against. And you look at the same thing on defense. They've got Yossi, who's an elite player in the NHL. They've got Char. I mean, he's aging a little bit, but got Sekera and Strite. But then it kind of veers off from there with Spiza and Ehrhoff and Seidenberg, and those guys are like bottom six guys. So I think the top four defensemen in the top six and forwards will be fine. But when it goes on from down there, and it kind of is the same thing in goal too. And we saw today, North America just lit up Thomas Greiss, and it was a bad game for him. And Philip Grubauer is there. Obviously it was a big hit for them losing Freddie Anderson. So now they've got Grubauer and Greiss who aren't starters in the NHL, and you're really relying on Yaroslav Halak to come out and play every game for them. And if he can't do that, then they're going to struggle there. So I think their big issue is depth. I mean, there's still a chance that they could surprise everybody and move on. I don't think they'd win the group, but they could, definitely steal second place from under the U.S. if they can, cause a few upsets.
Yeah, I think it depends. Like you said, and net is kind of worrisome. I mean, obviously, Anderson, going out, and if you didn't hear that news, he had that shoulder injury. They expect him to be back at the beginning of the NHL season for Toronto, so that's kind of where that's been. But like you said, Grice got lit up today by North America. I mean, and North America's been scoring goals. I mean, they've got 11 goals in 2 games. So we'll get to them a little bit in Group B. But yeah, I mean, that's a concern I see with this team is the goalie depth. Obviously, Grice probably won't be starting any more of the games. I don't know how they'll decide it, but if Halak goes, maybe it'll be a little bit of a better chance for them. But I agree with you, Eddie. The couple top lines and top pairings are great, but after that, it's going to be a little bit difficult to have a balanced attack and defense. I think they can hold their own against Czech, but Team USA and Team Canada, it's going to be, I think, an uphill battle for them.
Yeah, and then you look at the other team that's in the group too, in the Czech Republic. They've had a couple close games against Russia in the pre-tournament, but when it comes to the tournament and playing in such a tough group, I think they're going to struggle. I think it's hard to say any team is the worst team in the tournament. But when you look at their roster and the players they have, I think they have to be the underdogs for the tournament. I think their lineup on paper is the worst one. They still have some great players. They've got Jakub Voracek and Thomas Plekanec and David Pastrnak, Andre Palat. And they've still got some really, really good players. And I think their forward depth is okay. They've got NHL players in pretty much every position other than Roman Cervenka and Michael Berner, who I believe are both fill-ins anyway. But the real issue comes on defense, where their best defenseman is Zbigniew Michalek or Roman Polak. So there's no real elite players on defense for them. I think that's where they're going to struggle. Peter Mrazek, Michael Neuwirth, Andre Palat, they're all good guys in net. And like we mentioned, the forward group is pretty good. But on defense, you've got some borderline NHL players and some guys who don't even play in the NHL. So I think it's going to be tough for them in that aspect. I think that's where they're going to really struggle.
Yeah, I agree with you. If I was going to pick a team, like you said, I guess even in both groups, but of course, Group A, I would think that the Czech team would definitely finish at the bottom. Like you said, the defense is really the issue here. You've got Jordan, who's a UFA, not even signed. You've got a couple guys, KHL. You've got some other, lower defensemen. Not to take anything away from him, but like you said, if you're relying on Polak as your best guy, that's a little rough. I think the defense is definitely going to be something that Team Czech's going to have to worry about. They may squeeze out a couple games. Their goalie situation isn't too bad. Mrazek, Neuwirth, they could maybe, have some tight, low-scoring games, Eddie, that they could pull out. But I think it's going to be difficult for them in this group. I really think that they're going to probably be the ones that are going to end up, fourth in this Group A.
Yeah, and with that, I think summarizing Group A, I think we'd both have to say that it looks like Canada and the U.S. would be the teams to move on. I think most people would agree with that. Maybe an outside chance at Team Europe causing an upset and maybe even surprising Canada or the U.S. and moving on to the semifinals. But you would have to say that Canada and the U.S. are most likely the favorites for Group A.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be U.S. and Canada as the two favorites out of Group A. And, with that, we'll shift over to Group B. We'll look at the teams there and talk about our favorites here. And starting off, we've got Team North America, which, has been an interesting team, Eddie. Like I said, they've dropped 11 goals in 2 games. Obviously, this is the young guns team pretty much. You've got Connor McDavid on there. You've got Jonathan Druid, Jack Eichel, Johnny Gaudreau, Larkin, Austin Matthews. You just got a load of young talent on this team in the forward area. On defense, it's not as bad as well. As you've got Ekblad on there. You've got Riley Trouba, Jones as well. So, you've got a decent young group of defensemen as well. And then in net, you've got Gibson from the Ducks. And, of course, Matt Murray, the Pittsburgh Penguins, won the Stanley Cup. So, they're pretty solid in net too, Eddie. I think this team can actually, do some damage in Group B.
Yeah, and really, boy, are they fun to watch from the 2 games that we've seen so far. These guys can just fly. You've got some potential superstars and guys who are already superstars in the NHL. You've got Johnny Gaudreau, you've got Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid. Brandon Saad is coming off a great season with the Blue Jackets. Mark Scheifele's coming off a great season. Jack Eichel, who top draft pick, Jonathan Drouin, top draft pick. So, I mean, this team is going to be really fun to watch. I mean, you have Austin Matthews too, who's a first overall this year. So, from what we've seen from them, I mean, they can score goals, and that's for sure. And they're going to do that all tournament, no matter who they're facing, no matter what goalie they're facing, and they're never seemingly going to get tired either. So that's something they've got going for them. And even on defense, where I mean, normally you would expect a team this young to be weak on defense. I mean, you've got Aaron Ekblad, who's one of the best young defensemen in the NHL, Shane Gostisbehere as well, Seth Jones, Ryan Murray, Morgan Riley, Jacob Trouba. I mean, these guys are already top four in the NHL. So there's no issue there on defense. You might not have a superstar yet, but any of these guys on this blue line are eventually, even maybe even all of them are eventually going to be superstars in the NHL. And then you move into net too. You've got John Gibson, who was great for the Anaheim Ducks. You've got Connor Hellebuck, who had a great season for Winnipeg when he was there, and Matt Murray, who obviously won the Stanley Cup with the Penguins. So you've got three good goalies in net as well. So I think it's probably the most interesting team to watch. A lot of people's outside favorite, other than the country they're living in. Obviously, just to see all these young guys play on a team together is pretty exciting to watch. It's hard to pick a weakness on them. I think maybe the only weakness is just a lack of experience. Maybe it's hard to say that. I mean, these guys are all NHL players, but they did allow goals against Team USA today. Not Team USA, Team Europe today. So, is that maybe an issue when you face a team like Canada, the U.S., or even Sweden or Russia? I mean, we'll have to see, but it's definitely a team with a lot of potential and probably the biggest dark horse in the tournament to do well.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think, like you said, they're a fun team to watch. They beat Europe 4-0 in the first game, then the last one was 7-4. I mean, they jumped out early in that one, but like you said, they also gave up some goals later on. So I think if you're gonna want some entertainment when you're watching this tournament, this is the team to watch because I mean they are fast. There's speed all over the ice on this team, and I agree with you. Maybe the experience is a little bit of an issue just because it is a bunch of younger guys and it's guys that are newer to the league and haven't been as in many tournaments and situations as maybe some of the older guys. But I still think that this team has a good chance and it's actually one of the teams that you and I think will possibly move on from Group B. So we think that they're going to actually do pretty well in this group. And another team that we think that's going to do pretty well in this group is Team Sweden. They're pretty loaded as well, Eddie. You've got Backlund, Backstrom, Eriksson, Forsberg. You got former Duck, short-time Duck, Carl Hagelin on there. Just loaded all over the place. They got both the Sedins as well. Silfverberg, Rakell, which we'll talk a little bit about Rakell in a minute. We'll have an update on him. On the defense, you've got also Lindholm, of course, from the Ducks. So you've got the three Swedes in there from Anaheim. You've got Ekman Larsson on there, Hedman, Ekholm. I mean, it's a pretty solid group. Carlson, too. I mean, Strawman. I mean, there's a lot of good names on this team. You've got Enroth and Net, Lundqvist. I mean, this is a pretty solid group, and I mean, this is the other team that I think is going to do pretty well here in Group B, Eddie.
Yeah, and, they have a really strong team throughout. Similar to the U.S. and Canada, where their whole team is just loaded in every line, in every position, and I think they arguably have the best defense at the tournament. I mean, Ekman Larsson, Hedman, Carlson, even in Lindholm and Ekholm and Yarmouson and Strawman, these are all top four guys, and some of them are arguably the best defensemen in the league, and Hedman and Carlson, even Ekman Larsson. So I mean, their defense is great on forward. The Sedins obviously getting a little bit older, but they're still great players. Landeskog, we've got Rakell and Silfverberg there as well. Backstrom and Forsberg, who are great players as well. So they're going to have no problem scoring goals. Defense is going to be great for them, and they're going to get a lot of offense from their defense as well. I think the only issue for them might come in goal. I think if Lundqvist struggles, there's not much that they can go to after that. They've got Enroth and Markstrom as their two backups, and they're both backups in the NHL. So I think I think that might be the only issue for them. I mean, obviously you've got one of the best goalies in the league in Lundqvist, so it's hard to say there's an issue there. It's just you look at a lot of the other teams, and they've got a plan B and a plan C. Look at Canada and the U.S. for sure. They've got three elite goalies, and you can't really say Sweden has that. So I think if you had to pick an issue for them, I think that would be it.
Yeah, and the only other thing that came up with Team Sweden, obviously, was the news of Rickard Rakell. He actually had to leave and go home. The word is from the Swedish news is that he has some kind of a stomach flu. maybe food poisoning, something like that. It doesn't look like it's serious and he's going to be out for a while from the different reports that I saw. But a little unfortunate there, especially, I mean, obviously with our Ducks and, trying to get the contract done there, Eddie. It's a little bit of a blow to Sweden, but they've got plenty of forwards in there. I just, hope he gets, well, and whatever he ate that was bad, hopefully gets through his system and you get him back out there on the ice.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he'll be actually able to participate in the tournament, which would be nice because I think we're all excited to see him and the other Ducks play. But if not, like you said, hopefully he's healthy for the start of the season, and obviously it doesn't seem like it's anything too serious, so we'd expect him to be ready for the tournament, and if not, to be ready for the start of the season.
And then looking at the other teams here, we've also got Team Russia, which, this is kind of interesting team, Eddie. I don't know how they'll do in Group B. I don't think they'll do as well, but I mean, I'm not going to look down on them too much. But this team, it has some KHL players in it. It's got some decent, obviously NHLers. Obviously, Malkin's on the team, Kucherov, Tarasenko. Obviously some big names. Ovechkin, of course. You know that he's going to be on there. And they may do okay. I don't know. Their defense is kind of interesting. You've got Emlin on there, Markov, Orlov. A few decent players and whatnot. In goal, Bobrovsky's on there for Larmov. So you've got some decent goaltending there. I just don't know with the defense. And obviously the depth of this team trying to score. I don't know really how they're going to do in this tournament. I still think that they're I don't know. Maybe they could squeeze into one of those spots, but I think it's going to be tough going against North America and Sweden in this group.
Yeah, and let's be honest, the top two lines for this team could score for fun. I mean, you've got Kucherov, you've got Kuznetsov, Malkin, Panarin, Tarasenko, and Ovechkin. I mean, you couldn't ask for any better top six, and it's one of the better
Right.
ones in the tournament, that's for sure. At least for scoring goals. It kind of tails off from there. You still have Pavel Datsyuk, who's a great player. Vadim Shapachyov was one of the stars of the World Championships and was really looking to come into the NHL this season. Artem Anisimov had a great season for the Chicago Blackhawks. Evgeny Dadonov, these are all SK St. Petersburg players, so you would expect Dadonov and Datsyuk and Shapachyov to play together because they all play for the same team in the KHL. So I think their forward group is fine. I think, like you said, the only issue for them is on defense. Orlov is a good player for the Capitals. Kulikov just got traded to the Sabres. He's a good player. Emelin and Markov will play together. They've got experience playing together for the Canadians. And then you've got Marchenko and Zaitsev. But it's definitely not an elite defense, and I think that's their issue. I think in goal, Bobrovsky will be fine. Varlamov's a good backup, and even Vasilevsky is a good third guy for that team. So I think they're good in forward, good on goal. I just think defense for them is going to be an issue. And we saw them play two games so far where they just squeaked by the Czech Republic 4-3 and then lost to them 2-1 in a shootout. So that might be the real big issue for them is definitely defense.
Yeah, and with them fighting it out too, I think another team that's going to kind of be in the same boat as Team Finland. I don't know how they're going to do in this bracket, but I think still behind Sweden and North America, maybe they bump into one of those two spots as well. I mean, they've definitely got good quality players on here too. They've got Barkov on there, Granlund, Filppula, Jokinen, Koivu. Patrick Lean. I mean, you've got decent forward group on here. Teravainen's on here as well. So the forward depth, it's probably a little bit more balanced than like Russia. You were talking about how they had their top six. When you look at the defense, Olli Mata obviously is a big name on there, and we all know, of course, Sami Vatanen's on there, Restalainen as well. So you got some decent defensemen on this team. Another KHL player on here too as well. And then when you go to net, it really depends. I mean. You've got Rask and you've got Pecorine, so you've got some solid goaltending in there as well. I just think with this team, it's probably more of them trying to win together as a team. I don't really see them having as many caliber superstar players as maybe some of the other teams, Eddie, that could maybe carry some of those teams into the second round.
Yeah, and it still is a relatively young team. Obviously, you've got Mikko Koivu on there as well, and you've got Valtteri Filppula, Jussi Jokinen. But you also have some really young guys, especially in Sebastian Aho, Patrick Laine, two guys who haven't even made their debuts in the NHL yet. Toivo Teravainen, even Michael Granlund as well. So it is a young team. I think it's a pretty balanced forward unit, like you said. No superstars other than possibly Laine. Barkov is a great player as well, but they're going to struggle, I think, to score goals if their main outlet here looks to be Patrick Laine. So, and then on defense, it is a good defense. Obviously, the right side is really good with Vatanen, Ristolainen, and Ville Paka, and the left side's pretty good as well with Mata, Yoki Paka, and Lindell. But I think the big issue on defense for them just comes in the age of all these players. I mean, they're all very young, and you're relying on them to carry you through this tournament. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, you've got Team North America as well, who's a very young team, and they have some great defensemen there. But if like we do have to pick something, so I think either the forward depth and who's going to score goals for them, or possibly the age of the defensemen. I think they're set in goal with Pecorine and Tuukka Rask. I mean, you wouldn't expect both of those guys to get hurt, and even Mikko Koskinen had a great World Championship. So I think those would be the only two things you could really pick at with that team.
Yeah, and then if we look at Group B, I think we're in agreement on this. We think North America and Team Sweden are probably the ones that are going to come out on this one, Eddie. Those are our favorites in this group.
Yeah, I think you would have to pick those two. I think it's a lot more open of a group than Group A, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Russia or even Finland go on. I think the games for this group are going to be a lot closer. Personally, I think North America is probably the favorite. I just think the way they've played and just the caliber of players they have, I think they're a favorite to go through. But obviously, Sweden and the lineup they have, they're right up there. But we talked about how good Russia's top six is. They've got some great goaltending. Some questions on defense, but if they can just score goals for fun, I mean, there's a good chance they could go through. And Finland still is a good team as well. So, I mean, it's definitely more open, but the teams we expect to go on are Canada, the U.S., and then North America and Sweden.
And then from there, the way it would work, if those are the four teams, then depending on how they would finish, U.S. would play either North America or Sweden, then Canada would play one of those of the other two teams. So it'd be interesting to see because I mean, there's all kinds of combinations, which kind of makes it interesting, as we talked about earlier. I mean, U.S. could end up playing Canada again in the final, or North America against Sweden, or obviously, other teams in those groups as well, or it could be a Group A team against a Group B team. So I think that part's what makes it interesting for me, Eddie. Is I'm really going to be curious to see after the games, within each group. And then see what happens in that, second round, as we're calling it, with the one game, basically between each of the groups here. I think that's really going to be a fun part to watch and see, and just see how it shapes up because, like we said, anybody could play anybody in the final.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see Team North America play either Canada or the U.S. if they either one of them move on to the semifinals. Obviously, if our predictions are come true, then it would be either Canada or the U.S. playing Team North America in the semis, and it'd be interesting to see how they deal with that. Obviously, the kids on Team North America are from the Canada and the U.S., so it'd be a cool game to watch that for sure. And I mean, some of these guys on Team North America could play on Team USA or Canada right now. I think we all agree Johnny Gaudreau could probably make the Team US lineup right now, and maybe even Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon could play for Team Canada. So I think it'll be interesting to see that. But just like you said, the way it works out and how they move on to the final, I think it'll be interesting to see which team makes it there.
Yeah, and talking about these teams and whatnot, we do have, some fan questions that go towards the World Cup. I mean, obviously, some of them are Ducks related and whatnot, but we had Eddie Richard asks us, who do you like in this tournament that's not a Ducks player? So I'll throw that one out there for you, Eddie, and then I'll follow up. Which players are you maybe watching that, aren't on the Anaheim Ducks team or soon to be resigned to the Anaheim Ducks team?
I mean, if I'm gonna make it easy for him, I think I could pick one from each team pretty much. I mean, I really like to see what Brad Marchand does for Team Canada. I mean, arguably the only guy who's not a superstar on that team, so it'll be interesting to see how he does for them. I mean, I'm really excited to see Johnny Gaudreau play for Team North America. I think that's one of the players I'm most excited to see play at the tournament. I mean, I think he's been great, obviously, for the Flames so far, and once they get him signed to a contract, I think he's going to be amazing for them this season coming up. For the U.S., I'm excited to see how Kyle Palmieri does. I know technically he's not a Duck anymore, so I'm excited to see him, in a Team USA jersey, and I'm excited to see how well he does for them. For Team Europe, I would have said Freddie Anderson, but I'd have to say Thomas Tatar. I mean, there's a lot of hype about him coming to the Ducks this season. It'll be cool to see how he does on a great line with Kopitar and Zuccarello. I think he's going to have a better season than he did last year this year with Detroit, so it'll be interesting to see how he does. For Team Sweden, this is a hard one. Because I want to say Raquel, but obviously the question kind of goes against that, so maybe I would
Well,
say,
you don't have to pick from every team, just whoever you think, you know.
yeah, I mean, I'll say Philip Forsberg, and I'll just leave it at that because I don't really know. For Russia, I want to see how Vadim Shipachyov does because there was a lot of rumors about him coming to the NHL, and I kind of want to see how he does there. And then I think I'm not even gonna pick one from the Czechs or Finland. I can't really pick one from there.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I think as far as the ones that I'm looking at, I mean, definitely Team Canada. I'm really curious to watch. I mean, I like Seguin, Stamkos, and Crosby, so I'm definitely going to be watching Team Canada for that. Like you mentioned on Team USA, Kyle Palmieri for sure. I mean that's going to be interesting to see how he does. I also like Pacioretty. I want to see how he does in that lineup. That's probably about it from the Team USA. I do like Ben Bishop too. I want to see how he does in net. And probably overall, the biggest one I really want to see. I mean, I know we talked about already is really Team North America. I want to see these guys do well, Eddie. I mean, I know that we've talked about our favorites and we said that Canada's a big favorite, and obviously I'm rooting for the U.S. of course, but I like looking at this team. I want to see Druin do well, and Larkin and Matthews and McKinnon, McDavid. I mean, they're just such a fun team to watch. Being the young guys, being fast, maybe being a little bit, reckless here and there. They're obviously, like we said, not as much NHL experience on this team, but that's really what I'm looking at as far as the players go. But particularly if there's a team, North America is definitely the team for me to keep my eye on.
Yeah, and I think the exciting thing about this is you'll never get to see some of these guys play with each other again. I mean, you look at the top line right now; it's McDavid, Eichel, and Goodrow. I mean, eventually you'll see Eichel and Goodrow to play together for Team USA, but I'm sure you'll never see McDavid play with Eichel or Goodrow again. I mean, you don't expect Goodrow and McDavid to play together. They play on opposing teams in Calgary and Edmonton, and Connor McDavid is Canadian. So just to see all these guys play together, and even Larkin, who's American, Matthews is American. You got Shifley and McKinnon, who are Canadian. Drouin's Canadian. So it's really cool to see all these guys from the U.S. and Canada, some of the top prospects for each country play together on the same team. So I think that's one of the cool things about this team being made. I was skeptical, to be honest, about it being made in the first place, and now you look at some of the lineups and the players on this team and how they've been playing, and I think it's really exciting to see all these guys play together.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think when we first heard about this tournament and we heard, oh, there's going to be a Team Europe and there's going to be a Team North America, we were kind of like, okay, yeah, I mean, you're going to have this mixture of players, and I really didn't think Team North America or Team Europe were going to be much, see how they would be or whatever. And obviously, Europe losing Anderson, it was unfortunate because we wanted to see him in there. But of the two, I definitely think North America is the one to really watch and see how they perform. Because you made a good point. I mean, you're not going to see these guys, play together. I mean, some of the other teams, same thing. You're not going to see these guys play, which kind of makes the tournament all together fun. But particularly this team, like you said, you've got guys that are, young guys, coming up on all these other different teams. You're not going to see these guys, maybe as much unless maybe in an all-star game or whatnot, down the road, of course, because some of these guys, I mean, they're practically all-stars already, even though that they've, barely played or are going to soon play in the NHL. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things I like about this tournament is it's tough. I mean, and if you're a Ducks fan and you're watching this tournament, obviously a lot of people and a lot of our listeners we know are from the U.S. So you're going to sit there and go, well, I'm rooting for U.S. because that's my country and USA, and I get that. I'm rooting for U.S. too. But it's tough because you look at some of the other teams. And I want to root for Sweden. Obviously you got a few Duck players on there. I still want to root for Canada. You got Perry and Getzlaff there, and I think that's what makes it fun, Eddie. Is it just makes you kind of torn because you have certain players from your NHL team you like, but then they're on certain teams of other countries that maybe you don't necessarily like. So it kind of forces you to root for different people, and I just think that makes the whole thing fun in general.
Yeah, and it makes every game worth watching too. I mean, the skill level alone makes every team or every game worth watching. But you always have, you watch a game and you'll always have the couple players you're looking for. But it'll never be a boring game. I mean, you're never looking at a game and be like, oh, I don't know why I'm watching this. Like sometimes you'll watch the World Championships and you'll get maybe Latvia playing Slovenia or something like that, and you're like, oh, okay, I can watch this for Kopitar, and that's pretty much it. But I mean, in this, you've got 8 teams who have superstars on it, and all of them have a chance to win it, and I think that's the most exciting thing about this. And like we mentioned before, you've just got all these guys who might not play together again, especially on Team North America, but even on Team Europe. The only chance they get to play together is at this tournament, and from what we've seen so far from the pre-tournament games, it looks like it's been a good idea so far. And obviously, with the tournament starting on the 17th, it's going to be exciting to see the final outcome.
Yeah, and with that, that's like another fan question we had. We had Katrina. She asked us about, Kessler getting ejected and the things going on in that game. And I mean, if that's an indication of anything that's going on in this, I mean, those two games, like we said, we're having all good fun on Twitter and whatnot, and talking about these games. And obviously, those two games didn't count, as far as the standings and whatnot. But obviously, of course, they do because of, the national pride of each country. But I thought the play, I was kind of laughing just because when Kessler took out Weber, I threw out there the hashtag Weber sandwich, and I guess a lot of people understood what I was talking about and they thought it was funny too. But I thought it was kind of payback for, obviously the Ducks getting knocked out by Nashville. Even though, of course, Weber's switched teams now, but it was just kind of funny. But I like to see the intensity. Kessler's going a million miles an hour. You see him going a million miles an hour in the next game. Thornton knocks him around. I thought that the call was the right call against Kessler. Yeah, I mean, maybe Weber could have held up or whatnot. I don't know. But the thing is Kessler still hit him from behind. He still hit him face first into the boards and the glass. So I mean, I think that's what you got to do. You got to protect the players. So that was the right call. But I just like to see the intensity, especially between those two teams, Eddie.
Yeah, and it's nice to. Is that something that you thought might be lacking in a tournament like this? We saw it in the All-Star. We've heard it about the All-Star game for I don't know how many in a row now.
Right.
Is the game lacks intensity and it's just boring and there's no hitting. And you look at that game between Canada and the U.S. and it looks like any other game between Canada and the U.S. It's physical. They seem to hate each other. There's animosity there. Obviously there's the Kessler hit on Weber, which got a lot of criticism, and really it was just an exciting game of hockey to watch, and we didn't even just see that in Canada versus the U.S. We saw that even with Team North America and Europe. They're just good games of hockey. They're physical games of hockey. There's skill and everything involved. So I think that's what makes this so exciting. Is that something we were questioning at the beginning of this when this was all first announced, and being able to see that in pre-tournament games bodes well for the actual tournament games when it begins on the 17th.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, before this was announced, I'm sorry, right when it was announced in the beginning, I had some doubts, and I know a lot of people had sent me messages too. Why are we playing this tournament? It doesn't mean anything as far as the NHL regular season and all that, and yada yada yada. And I agreed. I mean, some of the stuff people were saying, I kind of felt the same way. But after seeing some of these games, these teams are actually playing for real. I mean, they're not. This isn't all-star game. So if you're at home listening or driving or wherever you are listening to our show right now, and you're like, you know what, I don't really care about the World Cup. I'm just going to wait till October. I'm going to watch the NHL and, forget the World Cup of hockey. I would tell you don't, because I saw some of the highlights, watched some of the games that I could here and there this last, few days, and it was actually fun to watch. And like you said, the players are actually hitting. They're not out there just skating around trying to create offense and score. I mean, these teams are actually really playing. Which is good to see. So it's intense and it's fun. And also, those games were just the warm up games. Those weren't even like the real tournament games, Eddie, which that's what was cracking me up. I was like, holy crap, Kessler's going out there, smacking people around. So, I mean, it was hilarious. I mean, other players were too, but that's the biggest one that people have been talking about. But, there's no lack of intensity in this tournament. That's the bottom line. And if you're on the edge of whether or not to watch this game, if you can watch it, I know it's on ESPN3 for a lot of them, and we've also posted the links with the schedules and whatnot on the social media. I try and watch it because so far it's been fun, Eddie.
Yeah, and to just summarize it, if you don't watch it, you're gonna miss out on some good hockey. I mean, from what we've seen so far and what looks like it's going to come, they're going to be great games. These guys are getting ready for the season. They're getting ready. They're getting warmed up. This is pretty much going to be their preseason. So, they're going to be playing hard. They're going to be, trying to play NHL level hockey to get ready for the start of the season. So I mean, any chance you get to watch a game, just tune in. It's going to be some great hockey, and I'm excited to watch all the games I can.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's going to be one other thing I think will be interesting about this, in particular for our listeners, because obviously a majority are Ducks fans, is how this will play out for the Ducks this season. You've got all these guys, 10 guys, well, 9 technically with Rakell, his issue, but hopefully he comes back. But I mean, you have all these guys already playing, skating, doing this stuff. Hopefully, as we've said before, knock on wood, none of them get injured. But I think it's kind of good. I think they're going to be ramped up and ready to go. And I think the big thing in this, at least in my mind, and I know it's only 10 guys, not the whole roster and whatnot, but you're talking about pretty much half the starting lineup for the Ducks is out there. I think it's going to help this team come out swinging in the beginning of the season. I mean, I hope I'm not wrong, but I definitely think that they'll have somewhat of a jump in their step, Eddie.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's almost better than preseason hockey, and some of these guys
Yeah.
don't even always play every game in preseason. You usually see the rookies and some of the other guys get a chance, and you might see Getzlaf and Perry play 1 or 2 games. I think them being able to play in big tournament against some quality opposition and just get ready for the season, like you said. Hopefully they don't get hurt, and I think them playing against this level of competition is going to help them be ready for the season. Obviously, they're not the only ones at the tournament. There's players from every team, and they're all going to be ready. But I think, I did criticize the timing of the tournament when it first came out too. But you think about it, and as long as nobody gets hurt, it is great preparation for the beginning of the season, and we should see these players come out of the gate flying for their teams.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll come back next week and we'll talk about more of the games as the action unfolds. If there's any Duck news, obviously we'll cover it. This week was pretty quiet. A couple things going on though that we can update you about is most of the articles now are on the pucknetwork.com. If you've had some issues logging on to the old blog, some of the articles may still appear there on some of the links or whatnot, but just go to the pucknetwork.com and they'll be on there. I know there's some glitches on the system. I'm working with some of the people from over there and trying to get it all figured out. So some of you have mentioned that to me, and I appreciate that. I'm trying to get some of those things fixed out, on the website. But that's where it's going to be now. We'll be putting out the articles on there. Nothing else is going to change. We're still on there, still doing our thing. If you are interested in writing for the Ducks, please always send me a message or whatnot. If you want to write about another team, let me know as well, and we'll try and fit you with whoever else you want to talk about. And we're also going to start our contest. What we do on our podcast shows, we have a phrase that we give out over the course of 3 or 4 shows. There's some key words in there, and the way it works is you listen to each show. Once you know the phrase, you email it to us, and then we'll pick a winner. And the winner is going to get 2 tickets to the Ducks home opener. Obviously, it's towards the end of October this season, but that's how it's going to work. The word for this week is Ducks, so write that down. The word is Ducks. And we'll give out another word over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And once we get that phrase figured out, we'll tell you when to submit it, and we'll go from there and announce the winner. So good luck to everybody. Thanks for listening. And let's hope Rakell gets better. And maybe we'll have some more Ducks news next week. Let's go Ducks.